This will be our second tutorial in 2019 Java programming course, and today we are going to be talking about classes and objects in Java. Before I continue, I'd like to remind you to subscribe to my channel by clicking on the subscribe button below this video. By doing that, you get notified when I make new lessons, and also you kind of motivate me to continue making these lessons for you. So just please click on the subscribe button below this video to subscribe to my channel. So another thing I would like to tell you is I'm taking three courses, Java, Python, and C++, and kind of Java is in between the two. C++ is very difficult, not very difficult, but more difficult than Java, so Java is kind of less difficult than C++, and Python is the easiest. So what does it mean? Java is in between. So if you start with learning Java, it's easy for you to learn Python. It's also easier for you to learn C++ than somebody that wants to start from the scratch. So that is one basic thing I tell my subscribers. Java is like the central place where you can learn, and then from there you move to other languages, JavaScript and other places. But if you learn C++, it's kind of will be difficult for you to get used to other languages. And if you kind of learn, let's say Python, which is a very easy programming language, well, you'll do well, build websites, maybe do data analysis, but you might need to spend more time learning other languages. So Java is a place to start. If you want to be a programmer, you start with Java, and from there you can choose other languages to learn. So let's start with tutorial 2, and like I normally do, I explain while we do it. So let's start with classes and objects. Classes are simply a blueprint, or like a skeleton or template used to create objects. What does this mean? It means that we have objects. Let's say we have a computer, we have a table. A class simply defines what the object is. What are the properties of this object? And then you can now create this object. When we do it, it becomes clear. Alright, so let's get started. Before we create our class, take note that all Java files are classes, right? This is one thing you need to bear in mind. Like I created this class called tutorial.java, which is a file called tutorial.java and is also a class. And that is why Java is object-oriented programming language, is because everything are classes. So we have this class tutorial, meaning that we already have one class. Well, there's something about this class we are going to be talking about later. If you go to the package project explorer, if you drop down this src, you come to the package, you can see our class, which is also a file. If you expand it further, what you are going to see is the name of the class and also the functions inside the class. So basically everything you are writing in Java has to be inside a class, right? Good. So let's now talk about classes. What I'm going to do now is to create a class that represents animals. Now what's the best practice of creating a class is to create it in a different file. Remember, in a different file. Remember, files are also classes. So let's go ahead to create a new class. So if you right click on your project, you can actually see new and you can see class, right? Good. So just choose new class. But one interesting thing there is that you will not see anything like new okay, you will not see new function, but you see a new class. All right. So choose it and let's call it animal. We are creating a class to represent animal, right? So now this class we are creating, we are not going to have a main inside because it's just a class, it's not the main program. So now that brings us to the next part. We want to talk about variables, and now inside this class we have animals. We want to define what animals look like. So we have to specify the properties of the animals. So what it means is that we are going to specify these properties as variables inside this class. So for instance, an animal will have number of legs, int number of legs, right? All right. So public int number of legs. This is a variable and it's called a second. Let's get back here. Yeah, it's called a local variable. I'll tell you why it is called a local variable. Take note that this is not a class variable. Now I'm going to create another variable that is a class variable. Int number of animals. Now this is a class variable. But for it to be a class variable, we have to use the keyword static. Good. So this is a class variable, meaning that this variable number of animals belongs to this class. But number of legs belongs to particular animals, right? So a particular animal, let's say dog, will have number of legs. But number of animals talks about animals generally, right? Or animals generally that is in your collection. I hope you are following. If not, just leave me a comment and tell me you don't understand. Now let's talk about something called a constructor. A constructor is what you use to create object of the class. So if I want to create an animal object from this class, I'll need a constructor. So a constructor is simply a function that has the name of the class. So let's say public animal int number of legs. All right. And I also like to say string type. All right. So this is an example of a constructor, and this means that if I want to create an animal object, I need to specify the number of legs and the type of animal, right? So let me create one more local variable called string type. This is a capital letter. I used capital letter. Let's continue with lowercase. Right. Okay. So I can easily say equal to number of these dots type is equal to type. Alright. So what is happening here is that if an animal is created, it needs number of legs and it also needs the type of animal. So let's go ahead to create an object. So what we created is a class called animal. So I'm going to come back to this place and I'm going to create an animal object. To create an animal object or to create an object from a class, you need to use the keyword new. And the process of creating an object from a class is called instantiation. So let's instantiate a new animal. So let's say animal is equal to new animal. So now it's asking me for number of legs, so I'm going to say 4, and the type of animal domestic. Alright? So this is basically how to create an object from a class. Alright? So I'm able to do this because I have a constructor available in this class. Okay, now it's possible for us to also create an animal without having any parameters passed to it. Now we are going to use a constructor that is called the default constructor. Let me add a comment here that says this is a constructor, right? So now if I create another animal, now I may create an animal without any parameters. Animal A2, okay, let's say animal 2 is equal to new animal Alright, so at this point we have an error message because we did not specify a default constructor that takes no parameters. So let's come back here and just specify public animal, and now we are going to leave it in this way because we want to create an animal when we don't have any data for this animal we are creating. So if you come back here, you can see that the error is gone. So we have an animal created using a constructor that has no parameters. So just take some time to wrap your head around all of this because the focus on object-oriented programming is about classes and objects. So this is basically how classes work. So we have error message here. Let's go fix it. So we need, okay, we have error message, documents. Okay, so create a constructor, which I already did. Animal. Okay, so basically everything is fine. So I'm going to save. Yeah, so there is no error in this place. So we've talked about classes, we've talked about objects, we also talked about creating objects, and now we talked about instance and class variable. So we talked about local variable, we talked about class variable. A class variable has to be created with the static keyword, right? So I'm going to end this tutorial here, and then we are going to continue in the next part. Let's try to understand clearly how to create more classes and also how to use these classes. I'd like to thank you for viewing.